Good morning and welcome to Power Pieces, Fashion as Armor and the Politics of Dress. I'm Leora Tannenbaum, class of 1991 and the chair of the Pembroke Center Advisory Council's Program Committee. On behalf of the Friends of the Pembroke Center for Teaching and Research on Women and our co-sponsor, the Sarah Doyle Center for Women and Gender, I'm delighted to welcome you to this Family Weekend program. We also offer special thanks to the RISD Apparel Design Department for so generously loaning us the dress forms upon which the garments you see here are draped. Over the next hour, we will explore fashion as a form of protection and personal and political expression. I hope you've had the chance to examine these 5 striking examples of what we're calling battle dress from the Pembroke Center Archives, offering a lens onto how clothing helps individuals confront hostility, assert presence, and shape identity. The research and teaching of the Pembroke Center explore social change and how questions of difference in gender, sexuality, race, class, religion, and more affect our thinking and our world. I want to call your attention to the group of supporters known as the Friends of the Pembroke Center. It's the Friends Advisory Council that organized this event today and that organizes other programs with the objective of connecting alums and other communities with the Pembroke Center. So now let's get to the program. It is my pleasure to introduce Mary Murphy. Mary Murphy is the Nancy L. Buck Pembroke Center Archivist at Brown University. She serves as head of the Pembroke Center Archives and curator of collections. The archives gathers the papers of women and non-binary people connected to Brown, feminist activists in Rhode Island, and feminist and queer theorists in the academy. Before Brown, Mary worked as manuscripts archivist and administrative librarian at the Schlesinger Library on the History of Women in America at Harvard. Her career has had a continuous focus on gender and sexuality collections in the United States. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, thank you so much. As curator of collections at the Pembroke Center Archives, my interests in power pieces began in the field when I was on a collecting trip to New York City in 2018 and at the home of Kate Bornstein. Kate is a transgender playwright, author of the groundbreaking 1994 text, Gender Outlaw, and an activist who also graduated from Brown University in 1969. I was at Kate's home to gather her papers for our archives, digging around in her closet when I brushed against a fringed leather jacket hanging just above me. I left her home that day without the jacket, but then ran into this picture later online. When I saw the image, it gave me chills. Wow, I thought, that is strength. I put the pieces together and knew the jacket in Kate's home was the jacket and that it was meaningful to Kate's collection. The jacket itself was Kate's armor and was telling us a story. When I asked Kate about it, she paused for a minute and I could tell her mind was swimming back in time. Paraphrasing her, she said something like, "Yes, that's a special jacket. You know, I was part of the underground leather scene. I loved that jacket. It made me feel powerful." From that day on, I started asking each new donor to our archives to contribute one item of clothing that was meaningful to them, that made them feel strong or protected. And to a donor, that question energizes them. We hope you will come up after the panel today and look closely at the items we have here with us, and that our answers to that question What power piece is meaningful to you? On the furthest right, is that right? Yep, is Kate's jacket. It is as cool as it has ever been. Next, we have a beautiful black velvet coat of many sparkles that the scholar of African American literature and Brown alumna, Dr. Ann Ducille, wore to Toni Morrison's 70th birthday party at the New York Public Library in 2001. Anne didn't hesitate when she reached into her closet. She recalled that Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. approached her at that party and told her she was the best dressed person in the room. Next to Anne, we have a punk vest donated by the transnational feminist theorist and very famous zine artist Mimi Tai Nguyen, who has notably spoken out against racism within the Generation X Riot Girl movement. The cut's top rocker reads, "We will outlive them." That to me means everything. She wore that moniker on her back like a feminist warrior. Then we have military fatigues from Miranda Summers Lowe, class of 2009. A physically petite person, Lowe donated her uniform, which she wore as an Army Black Hawk helicopter door gunner during Operation Iraqi Freedom, making a strong argument that in war, size doesn't matter. I'm not sure if it's the camouflage or the dog tags that speak volumes. Women are combat veterans, and they deserve respect. And lastly, we have a Handmaid's Tale costume created by the Women Project, whose advocacy served to pass the 2019 Rhode Island Reproductive Privacy Act. Volunteers use these cloaks as tools, standing shoulder to shoulder in the rotunda of the Rhode Island State House, reminding lawmakers that they were under the eye of Rhode Island women, that all of us were watching, and we're not going to let misogynists grind us down. We are living in challenging times, but when the battlefield is all around us, we each know the armor that serves us best. I look forward to hearing from our speakers as they share their important insights on this topic. Our discussion today will be moderated by Denise Davis, Associate Teaching Professor of Gender and Sexuality Studies, Director of the Graduate Certificate Program in Gen Sex, and editor of Differences, a journal of feminist cultural studies. In addition to regularly teaching method, evidence, critique, gender, and sexuality studies across the disciplines, the core course taken by all PhD students pursuing the graduate certificate in Gen Sex, Dr. Davis's recent and current courses include a sophomore seminar titled, "Is This Working?" on the social politics of work, agnotology, the will to ignorance on what we don't know, what we refuse to know, and what we can't know, and Introduction to Gender and Sexuality Studies. Her current research explores the relation of popular theorizations of gender to psychoanalytic concepts of sexual difference. I turn it over to Denise and the panel. Thank you.
Welcome. I would like to first just introduce the panelists, and then we'll move to the questions. So I'm going to introduce you first, Liz. Liz Collins is an artist based in New York City, known for pushing the boundaries of art and design in innovative and experimental work in fabric, yarn, and other materials and techniques associated with textile media. Whether in the form of textile, painting, drawing, or installation, Collins frequently explores the dichotomy of structure and entropy, qualities inherent to textile that speak to the fissures in broader architectural, political, and social structures. Collins' work has recently been on view in the 60th Venice Biennale, Foreigners Everywhere, curated by Adriano Pedrosa, and in Woven Histories, Textiles and Modern Abstraction, curated by Lynn Cook, and presented at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, National Gallery of Art in Washington, National Gallery of Canada in Ottawa, Museum of Modern Art in New York. In July 2025, Collins opened Liz Collins' Motherlode, a mid-career retrospective at the RISD Museum here in Providence with an accompanying monograph. The show runs through January 11th, and if you get a chance to go down, I highly recommend it. It was a great show. I think we've all been now. Karen Akilah Marks is a PhD candidate in American Studies at Brown. Her dissertation, Under the Cover of Night, Queer Nightlife in the Shadow of the Dance Floor, broadens nightlife beyond clubs and parties to include the underexplored spaces of internet platforms and the bedroom that continuously question time, the body, sexuality, gender, race, and sociality as these concepts organize our lives. Alongside their academic work, Karen Akilah performs drag and burlesque at Kiki Strike Edwards. Her debut article, Claudia's Body, Black Femme Excess and Escape in Interview with the Vampire, appeared in Women and Performance Studies and considers drag performance and the vampire as a queer creature of nightlife. They are currently serving as a teaching assistant for the intro class that I'm teaching, and the students adore them. Karen Akilah holds a Bachelor of Arts in Ethnicity, Race, and Migration from Yale. And last but not least, Madison Moore is an artist, scholar, DJ, and the John Atwater and Diana Nelson Assistant Professor of the Arts here at Brown University. Madison holds a PhD in American Studies from Yale and has previously held positions in the Rotsky School of Art and Design at the University of Southern California, the Virginia Commonwealth University, the New School, the University of Richmond, King's College London, and was a visiting guest artist in the David Geffen School of Drama at Yale. He is broadly invested in the aesthetic, sonic, and spatial strategies queer and trans people of color use to both survive and thrive in the five-alarm fire of everyday life. His first book, Fabulous, which I have here. In fact, we can. It's Fabulous, The Rise of the Beautiful Eccentric, which was published in 2018, offers a cultural analysis of fabulousness as a practice of resistance. He is currently working on a second book project, How to Get Your Nightlife, focused on Black queer nightlife as a method of living. So first I have a question. My own sort of opener here is just that I think whether we like it or not, we're embodied. We experience ourselves both as seeing and being seen, which means we're always reading and being read. Beyond its functionality, then, clothing is also a means of expression or communication. It says something about the way we want to be seen by others. So I wanted to ask each of you just to comment, if you would, on what you're wearing today. Are you wearing a power piece? Liz, do you want to start?
Sure. Okay. Get the sound right. I guess I'll stand up for a second so you can see. Okay. I'm wearing a jumpsuit.
Yes.
I think the jumpsuit, maybe many of you in this room can relate, is a general kind of power piece for women these days, or for anyone really who just wants to put on something with ease that makes a strong kind of statement about, I think, strength and utilitarianism. And, well, I won't go into the story about the jumpsuit, but suffice it to say, I've loved jumpsuits for years. And I did a project that had jumpsuits as a uniform that you can see down at my show at RISD Museum. But this jumpsuit in particular is one of my current main power pieces that I love to wear because it's so complete in its kind of look, and it's not an ordinary jumpsuit by any means. And the color blue is something I feel is, like both kind of straightforward, kind of blending in, but at the same time, the design of the jumpsuit is something singular and unique. So I feel like it's a mix of kind of like being like normcore, but kind of flamboyant, some kind of indicator that I'm into art and design, some kind of concession to the integrity of like the cut and the detailed elements. It was made by a woman in Brooklyn. She has a company called Risen Division that makes incredible jumpsuits, in case anyone. And they all have names, like, I think this is maybe the Annie Albers jumpsuit. Like, she names them after iconic design figures. I also have jewelry on that I always wear that is like my power medal, it's something, lesbian metal necklaces. And then I'm wearing Doc Martens, which I see that I'm not the only one on the panel. And Doc Martens are a real kind of easy power shoe, both sturdy and real boots on the ground, feet on the ground, a little bit of, history. We'll get into that later. Yeah, so. And I'm growing out my blue hair. I think, if we're going head to toe. Yes. I had blue hair for 10 plus years, and now I'm done. So you get the remnants. Thank you.
Now it's a perfect accessory just to set off your blue jumpsuit. So. Madison?
Yeah, I guess I will stand up too. So this is what I'm wearing. Okay. And the shoe as well. I often say that my favorite colors are black and sequins. I love sequins in any color. We can thank my grandmother who raised me for that love. And I think, so the story behind these shoes that I got recently, I was doing archival research in San Francisco, and then the archive closes at around noon, and so I went to kind of, have a lunch break or whatever. And I saw these shoes, and I thought, these are the gayest shoes I've ever seen. I have to have them right now. So I tend to bike everywhere, and I usually wear these when it's sunny out, so you really get the effect of the shoe. And I would say that my interest in kind of sequins and shine really is to do with like luminosity, light. And I think about someone like the art historian Krista Thompson, who talks about the role that light has played in Black diasporic sort of performance and art practice itself. So for me, like thinking about luminosity and light and even volume, like the kind of volume here, it's about not necessarily about being seen, but about taking up space. That's how I understand or how I approach, fashion. And I tend to wear, I'm not wearing all black today. I mean, I almost did, but I put on some jeans. And I figured out at an early age, as I was figuring out kind of my relationship to gender and gender expansiveness, that if, as a closeted person in like the Midwest, if I wore black, I could wear a skirt because it would then be maybe goth, or it could be punk or some other thing. So that was, I have a particular relationship to sort of black as a kind of color, kind of power moment, and as a space of exploration of gender as well. So that's me.
Thank you. I get the safety of black.
Hello.
Karen Akilah.
I will also complete the spin. This is a full circle skirt, so I had to get some velocity there. So this dress was a gift from my partner, but actually it's kind of become my recital dress. So I wore it when I defended my dissertation prospectus. I wore it the first time I had to lead a 2.5-hour long seminar, which I'd never done before. And while it's very demure, I know we're definitely thinking Little House on the Prairie right now. It has a lot of volume in the skirt, like a lot of heft, and then also in the sleeves. So it really like makes me feel physically larger, and I get to take up that space when today when I was running down the stairs because I was running late for the bus, I had that big train moment. But also on the other hand, it makes me need to rise to the occasion of the dress. So I know that I can't let it engulf me. I know that when I put it on, I can't actually be too demure because then I'm just kind of swathed in linen and frills. So it's something that, brings comfort, but also challenges. And I guess if we're doing the full head to toe, I'm blonde right now, and I've also been dyeing my eyebrows, and when you add in jewelry and everything, that's a nice feeling of kind of you wake up feeling already kind of shielded and adorned in a way. I like to say I'm a natural blonde, if anyone would believe me. But this is also, I think, part of that. And then, also the Doc Martens, because like I said, I was running for the bus this morning, so I needed a performance shoe and also something to set the dress off. I really like working with opposites whenever I'm dressing. So that's my power piece for today.
I can't help but comment on the Doc Martens. When my own daughter got her first pair of Doc Martens, it was like, wow, everything comes around. I think I was her age when I got my first pair, and then she was, so. This is also a question to all of you. I just wondered what factors you take into account when you're getting dressed. Do you regard your clothing choices as a political or cultural statement? Especially in light of the current political moment, when white conservatism is being aggressively reasserted, while racial diversity and queer differences are being devalued or even punished. Madison, will you start this time?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the day. I think style, fashion is always like a negotiation, or do you have the energy today? Do you feel like it, or maybe not? Where are you going? Are you going to be safe, right? And so sometimes I will be reluctant to wear something or I'll change when I get to the place or add the thing, because I'm trying to navigate safety. So I think for me, I'm thinking about all these things. I'm thinking about what is the location? Can I get there safely? Do I feel like it today? And also, I'm a drama queen, so I love drama. I love the performance of style, of entering a room and, adding energy to the space. I think of style in terms of like I was saying earlier, like less about visibility and more about, energy transfer and kind of taking up space and I think risk is such an important part of how we get dressed, especially if you are navigating or, coloring outside of the lines in any way.
Karen, Akilah?
Yeah. Is this? Yes. Okay, now I'm on. When I am getting dressed, I definitely, first I usually am thinking of comfort. We live in New England and I don't have a car. So I'm often usually thinking of warmth, which is also something that gives me that power as well. But I think that also something, for example, like wearing a lot of bright colors, I tend to either be wearing all black or a lot of like clashing colors and patterns is something that I found, which is something that takes me through those cold, dark winter months. But also there's a lot about the history of Black people in America, but also in England and the Caribbean being seen as people like remarking historically on the bright colors that they would wear. So whenever Black migrants to England in, Victorian times and everyone's wearing their gray and black dresses and dealing with all the coal dust in London and would see these new migrants from the Caribbean and they'd be wearing bright colors, and that's something that I've been keeping up with. I went to the mall the other day and everything was beige and gray, which feels, I'm not sure if maybe people are having Barbie fatigue from the great like pink marketing of 2023. So that might be the turnaround, but I think we definitely are also seeing that in things like fashion, that there is kind of this streaming into very mute neutral colors and not necessarily in like, the cool, like the cool girl way, but also in terms of trying to like mainstream or have a uniform going on. And I think also something like a lot of gold. My family is from Guyana, so I have always had like been surrounded by jewelry and gold. All the jewelry I'm wearing right now, I sleep in it, I shower in it. It's kind of like part of my body by this point. And I think that there's also something there about like fine jewelry that might be like silver and demure and diamonds versus this idea of like the very like large gold bamboo hoop earrings. And you see a lot of that split. Carrie in Sex and the City at some point literally says, like, I don't want my engagement ring to be gold because I only wear ghetto gold for fun. Ghetto gold is a direct quote from Carrie from Sex and the City. And I think that we see that coming back in these decades. It was something very interesting to witness as a piece of media from 20 years ago. As it comes back around. And I think also we see the most recent Met Gala theme highlighting Black dandyism and kind of seeing how Black people kind of have developed this way and practice of like always presenting yourself and always putting yourself together. So that's something I think about. The Tignon laws of the late 18th century that were laws that forced Black women to wear scarves over their hair to cover the elaborate hairstyles they were doing, and then the response to that was to have elaborate scarves, and became also then a marker of fashion and distinction rather than disciplining the body and the movement. So that's something that I consider also, and that also explains why I love accessorizing, whether it's through things like scarves or jewelry, but also actually like changing the color of hair, making those decisions, and you're just here to stand out and say, I'm here, whether or not anyone wants me to be.
Thank you. This is something that Madison and I have an ongoing conversation about, kind of respectability and propriety, and daring the impropriety of wearing the wrong thing to the wrong place. Liz?
Sure. This is such a hot topic. I love it. We could just be here all day. And it's just such an interesting subject, personal style. And I've been obsessed with my own personal style for my whole life. And I really think of myself as a shapeshifter in terms of how I present to the world. And that's been consistent for decades. Some days it feels like a costume, like I had a period in my 20s where I was like, kind of driven by my tastes in music. My clothes were driven, like I had my metalhead moment, and I would some days dress like kind of ridiculously as a metalhead with like these purple lace-up pants and Doc Marten boots. And anyway, just like ripped t-shirts, mix of punk and metal maybe. And I've been through lots of different styles, and there was a whole era, like when I was a professor at RISD for 10 years, I was very into this idea of being one of the best dressed people at the school. It was like part of my mission, and it was like I wanted some kind of like notoriety around that for like professional kind of high femme avant-garde chic.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think I did pretty well. And I was working at the time for this great designer named Gary Graham, who some of you may know from his recent fame on Making the Cut, but he's one of my dear friends. And I was doing some freelance work for him, some design work, and we bartered, like, because I was making a salary at RISD. I was like, I don't need you to pay me. Let's just keep bartering. And so I had these extraordinary garments that I could never afford to buy, like $500 pants. And, it was just a time where I had some very fine clothing and was very invested in the outfits. Cut to the past 12 years, since I left that job, I don't have to dress for my job. I'm an artist, and artists are notoriously able to kind of wear whatever they want. I think there are a lot of examples of artists kind of being defiant in formal settings of wearing whatever they want, or like a fabulous red and pink suit, or, so there's kind of this permission to dress how I want to and still be my professional self. That said, I care about, looking good and not being like a, defiant, sloppy person. My sloppy kind of normcore days are devoted to those days when I want to be invisible, and that's actually kind of a lot, or maybe 50% of the time. So like when I get home tonight, I'm gonna put on my sweats. You know, who doesn't want to do that? It's so comfortable. And I love kind of disappearing. Like, I love this shape-shifting thing of disappearing. I mean, I'm a middle-aged woman. There is a big conversation around invisibility once you hit a certain age, and I've definitely experienced that. And maybe is that why I dyed my hair blue when I was in my mid-40s, you know, to like counteract the invisibility that I was starting to experience in perimenopause, like this consciousness around like no longer being a desirable woman in this certain kind of realm, even though I'm queer and, you know, who cares? But yeah, I think, I mean, clothing is messaging. And one of the things I thought of when you asked this question that's persisting is this T-shirt that I do wear a lot that a friend of mine who was very active in ACT UP gave me. It's like a sleeveless T-shirt. You know, the sleeves are cut off. It's black. It's from San Francisco. It's probably from the 80s, and it says something about women act up, and it has a pink triangle, and it fits just right. And I wear it sometimes in certain situations where I'm trying to send a message about my activism and my politics. Sometimes I take off my jacket. It's in certain situations where I want, like, it's a clue of who I am. Another kind of, I think, counter to the invisibility of, like, I think all my life I've wanted to not look plain or normal as a Leo, you know. Yeah.
Can I stick with you, Liz? First of all, I'm admiring your socks, which are absolutely amazing.
Oh, thanks.
Your early work in fashion was very sculptural, and although you eventually moved away from the human form, you didn't stop working with textiles. What are the continuities and what are the ruptures between your early fashion designs and your artistic practice over the last 20 or so years? Were the early designs period specific? That is, do they relate to a moment in your personal history or to a broader historical or political moment? I think you've already alluded to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think I want to answer the second part of the question first because it's maybe easier and less kind of a big chronology. So my early designs, meaning the work I did in fashion, right? Is that kind of, that's what we're thinking of. And for anyone who, because you can't really search Liz Collins knitwear fashion and find much online because I was doing my collection in the early aughts before we were really like so deeply immersed in internet media culture, right? So it's not like you can Google and see videos of all my runway shows and photographs of all my runway shows. We were still very much in a print era, like getting press in print was a very important. So anyone who really wants to understand kind of the scope of my fashion work, I definitely go see the RISD show because there's a whole room devoted to it and videos of those runway shows. So it's, you know, a unique opportunity to see this archive. And that work I created here, I mean, I started creating that work here in Providence as a grad student at RISD in 1997. I devoted 2 years to getting my MFA with a very clear goal of starting, like graduating and launching a fashion knitwear business. This process where I could make fabric and clothing in one concurrent and kind of alchemical to be process, like material process. And so it was a very kind of big period, a generative period, and it was also the time when I was really exploring my sexuality and my identity as a queer person. Like, am I? Like, my first adult girlfriend was someone I met in my first year of grad school. So, you know, I say sometimes I'm a late bloomer, like, I came out when I was 27. I mean, I was a queer person all my life, kind of maybe a big time of being closeted for, several years. Not my childhood, but then I shut it down. So when I was like mining my emotional landscape to do my clothing collection, which is really what the core subject matter of it was, that was very intertwined with my personal experiences of coming out. And I want to cite the Sarah Doyle Center as a place that was a real beacon for me during that period, because RISD didn't have any resources that were outward facing for queer students. And I was so hungry to figure out how to be a lesbian, figure out, I needed resources, I needed books, I needed to find these books, and I would walk up the hill to Sarah Doyle Center, and it was like a real haven, and I would just hang out in there and read books. So I learned a lot from that and appreciate it. So yeah, I think that period, my early designs were completely part of my personal history. And they tapped into a lot of what I came to understand as sublimation of my own desire, right? So the work that I was doing that had elements of bondage and holes in all these interesting places, and very kind of sensual, transformative garments that you couldn't forget you were wearing were really intertwined with my own relationship to desire and my own sexuality and my relationship to other people. So that's a long answer. I don't know if I should go into the other thing or...
I can come back to you.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
Madison, I'm going to direct a question to you now. In your book, and I'm going to quote from your book, you write that Fabulous wants to get us past gender, to abstract it, to end it altogether. Would you say more about the relation of extravagant style or fabulousness and its relation to gender?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so in the book, I kind of make this claim about fabulousness as not being about money or designer labels or access to the fashion system, and more about imagination, creativity, this kind of DIY thing of making it from scratch. I think about the Black gay writer Joseph Beam, who in an essay titled Making Ourselves from Scratch talks about the way that, women and folks of color and poor folks, working class folks attend to questions of style, and that really interested me. And I think I was really interested in, the worlds that folks like the club kids were building in New York in the 80s and 90s. Club kids being, these art school radicals, some of them maybe who moved to New York and didn't have money, but had ideas and had cereal boxes and tape and made looks out of that stuff, And I was interested in that as a kind of creative practice, that DIY sense of hacking into something to create something else. And if you think about it, other folks in that space, like Kevin Aviance, this idea of gender fuckery rather than a kind of drag that's about rhyming with gender, something that tries to actually do something otherworldly and abstract it, Kevin Aviance, who never wears wigs, for example, right? But has headpieces and other things that kind of give that effect. And, I think about I think my earliest style inspiration, and you're gonna get it as soon as I say it, was Prince. I think for me, growing up again in Missouri, in St. Louis, being closeted, I was fascinated by Prince because he could be so sort of exuberant and everybody loved him, but I was like, but it's so queer, look at the queerness, but somehow if I come out, I'm scared, but you guys love Prince, my family, how do we navigate that? So I kind of thought, well, if I can just align myself with Prince, then maybe I can kind of be an open secret, And so I think that's how I'm thinking about gender and abstraction as it relates to fashion. Again, not as about the hottest item from the runway, but about imagination, creativity, and like willfully crossing those lines of gender fuckery, you know? Yeah.
Thanks so much. I'm so glad you brought Prince into it, just because it's so hard to say. I mean, my daughter would have said when she was 4, he's a beaufy. You know, like, is he masculine or feminine? It's like, he's a beaufy, she said. Karen Akilah, this is right off, I think, the question that Madison just answered is, you know, Shakespeare, of course, we all know Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. So how do you think of the theatrical nature of drag, which you're obviously is a part of your own practice, in relation to the daily ritual of getting dressed?
Yeah. So my drag practice and performance, I identify my drag more as drag queen. I'm not a drag king, and I think that I'm, you know, maybe joining a very long lineage of lesbian drag queens that exist. People do say that the femme lesbian is maybe a lot more aligned to the drag queen in terms of trying to portray a sense of gender that's divorced from like a normative femininity that's meant to attract a man with your gentle wiles. So it can be maybe a bit more aggressive. It can be more sparkly. It can be, you know, maybe sometimes going more towards robot or alien. And of course, these are also things that, you know, a straight woman could also portray, but it's a lot of it is kind of questioning why we do gender the way we do and what makes things feminine, and being able to break some of that down. I think that when I am dressing both in and out of drag, I'm thinking, what is the story I want to tell? Sometimes that story is just, I'm going to the pharmacy. And sometimes that story is, you know, trying to make like a vampire character, or like, you know, having like, what is her backstory? What is she doing? What does she want? But I think also some of that is kind of thinking about how I would like to be seen. Am I okay with being misunderstood or going over someone's head? So if I'm making a drag act, sometimes I realize that I'm taking too much time trying to make the audience understand exactly what I want to get across in my 4 to 5 minute number, where, I mean, usually these are at bars and clubs, so I'm also like asking a lot for people at 11 p.m. at a bar. But I think also some of that is retaining a sense of mystery. Both in and out of drag, usually half of my face is covered, and that's been like something where I've been, in the past 5 years, kind of developing like, how do I come across to people? Like, sometimes I'm like, am I approachable because half of my face is covered? I don't think any of my students are scared of me, so that's good. But I think also, yeah, having some of that question come up as well is a lot of what I'm thinking about is mostly what's the story you're trying to tell. And I think that also then that bit of mystery also then comes with the trappings of the femme lesbian, which is, you know, if you're a lesbian, why would you wear eyeliner? Why would you wear mascara? Why would you wear a skirt? And it's like, well, I don't know. What do you think? Maybe it's because it's fun. Maybe it's because I really like the color purple. So I think that that is part of the questions, usually having a little bit of mystery. What's the story you want to tell? How much are you trying to bring people in, or, you know, hold them off or give your performance? It also is, there's a lot more sequins and sparkles when I'm in drag as well, yeah.
Can I just you mentioned you didn't use the word hyperbolic, but there's a certain kind of overt femininity that
Absolutely.
maybe speaks to a kind of aggressiveness rather than seduction. And drag, I'm sure you've heard the criticisms that there have been certain feminists have taken umbrage at the ways that feminine drag hyperbolizes and exaggerates femininity. The argument is that the sheer ridiculousness of many of these performances makes a mockery of women. How do you respond to that criticism?
Yeah, I think that my response would be that the sheer ridiculousness is maybe more so highlighting the ridiculousness of the demands of everyday normative femininity in the first place. And maybe it's more of a mockery not of woman, but what is expected of us in presenting ourselves. So for example, you know, like a really large sculpted wig that's full of glue and hairspray could call attention to the fact that, like, you know, why is it so upsetting to people if like a woman's hair isn't combed properly or isn't coiffed? What's wrong with the messy bun? And also thinking about the idea that actually a lot of what we think of as normal or normatively feminine does come with a lot of work that has just become so much part of our lives that we don't think of them necessarily as work. So Omiseke Natasha Tinsley, in her book, The Color Pink, brings up the word femtech, and it can expand to everything from, you know, a gender affirming like breast augmentation for a trans woman to an eyeliner pencil for everyone. And if we start to think of these as technological things that help us shape our gender expression across the board, that then we kind of see how these are all tools and tech that we're taking in, and it really calls into question a lot of these things. I think also on the other hand, the ridiculousness can create a sense of play about gender. I think that also some of these criticisms are, you know, being a woman and being feminine is nothing but suffering and sadness and hardship. But I think that
Beauty
some
hurts.
Of these, yeah. But also some of the hyperbolicness is also finding that levity also. So then thinking of femininity and feminine performance as play rather than an obligation that you have to fulfill simply because you were born a certain way or you're, you know, set up in the world or in a household in any fashion. Anecdotally, when I was first starting drag, I was trying to get a handle on the makeup and kind of trying to figure out, like, why is this not looking like a drag queen's makeup and more so just like I'm, you know, like really like sculpted red carpet ready? How do I get that drag queen look? And something that a lot of people maybe know is that drag queens tend to block out their eyebrows and draw them a little bit higher. Some people will tell you it's because a lifted eyebrow is a more feminine shape. They might say like, oh, like biologically, males have lower eyebrows, which of course varies across like people and race, of course. But also some people will also point out that it's just giving you more real estate for your color. This ½ inch right here goes a really long way when you're on stage and you're far away and it's dark, but there's a lot of bright lights. And that's part of the key. It's that, you know, it's not necessarily just ladies have higher eyebrows, therefore we draw our eyebrows higher. It's also, I really want everybody to see this makeup palette that I have, and I'm making my eyes larger and really making myself this character. I'm making myself bigger. I'm also not claiming that there are drag queens that have perfect, you know, relationships with femininity and misogyny, but you know, those people, we DM about them, we talk about them, they usually run their course in the community, so yeah.
I think I'm gonna, I have so many more questions for you all. I really want to hear about your punk aesthetic, Liz, but maybe someone in the audience. I think we should open up to the audience if you have questions.
Can you think of any situations where you might deliberately dress in a way that is kind of not armor or not conveying some form of power? And it's a cheat to say the Handmaid's Tale thing, because that is sort of anti as a way of expressing power.
I mean, I can answer that. Sorry, my water. Sorry, it's just water. I mentioned about like throwing on the sweats, you know, and Karen Akilah just mentioned the pharmacy outfit. I think those are like utilitarian moments that, I mean, I can only speak for myself in saying like, there's nothing intentional there other than comfort and just like a disregard for anybody else's opinion, you know? So that I don't think it's a power move as much as just like a self-focused, like there's something you said in your book, Madison, about fashion, style, fabulousness being an act of self-love. And I think that's, that can go either way, power or dismissal of those intentions, like a release from even having to think about that. That's in brief.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm Lisa Biggs. I'm in Africana Studies. And I wanted to ask if you could unpack the idea of politics and as it relates to power and dress a little further. I think you've each alluded to how sometimes, picking a style for the day or for eras or for eons doesn't come out of nowhere. There's an awareness that styling the body makes one visible as an insider in a community or an outsider. And I'm struck just by, the relationship of how dress becomes a site in which we play out political discourses and practices. So what is appropriate where, when, for whose body, and how those norms and expectations shift over time. I realize that is a very long and perhaps poorly worded question, but I was just wondering if, we're at a time in which many more things are permissible. The very fact that any of us, people who are feminine identified, are wearing pants is a big deal, because there was a fight for pants, which seems ridiculous now, but there was a fight for pants. But denim tells a story as well. The jumpsuit has a history, the sparkles have a history, be that the practice from the materials, the communities that mill this material, that make it available for styling. But I'm also thinking about moments of upset right now in our culture, even though things are more permissible. Like, is there a fight over sagging and bagging still? Are we still doing that? And what is the deal with, like, people are upset about people showing up on airports wearing hair bonnets? Like, I really appreciate the focus on how dressing enables us to show up for ourselves and as ourselves. But I'm also sitting with the very reality that clothing is absolutely a tool that people use to surveil and to authorize policing and violence. And that, and so I was just wondering, if there's items of clothing that you are seeing now that you think are sites of tension, or that we can use, your clocking now is like a moment of shift or change in the culture. I referenced the bonnet. I don't know if other people know about the bonnet, but yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. Sorry, lots of words. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just jumping in because actually with the previous question, I was thinking that the airport is a place where I tend to dress more for trying to maybe not even necessarily make myself more accessible. I mean, the thing is that you're already there, you're already in the TSA line. But it's always like trying to figure out like what is the best way to get through that line. And it's not just a matter of like whether or not you're taking your shoes off on any given day, but also, for example, wearing like hair bonnets at the airport. I've had my hair checked at the airport before. And, it was a day where I was like, okay, I won't make my hair like too big, so there won't be this like fear that I'm somehow hiding a knife in it. So I put it into little braids. And I mean, granted, this was in the Netherlands, so I don't know what's going on for them over there. But the like TSA, like during the pat down, she like tugged my braids, my hair. So then whenever I think about bonnets at the airport, then I think like, oh, was that maybe also then a sense of, yeah, tell me to take this off so you can get your hands all up in my hair. But then I also would worry that, I might be caught unawares if I was unprepared in that situation. So I think that that's like a situation where, for example, that's a space just of surveillance automatically because of just the heightened tensions of the airport. I think there are situations where I find myself dressing more business casual. I might put on a little blazer for a talk or for entering certain places if I think it might get me better service. Sometimes trying to tell, people say I have a very young face, so sometimes if I'm trying to tell, am I being ignored for service because people think I'm a high schooler who's not here to spend money, or that I am a Black customer who does not have money to spend, as well, is something that I also think about for sure. So yeah, thank you for also bringing this question up.
I think, and just building on this, I think the airport is just such a, I'm now being terrorized by all the kind of examples that I can call to mind. Certainly when I travel, like I don't wear any jewelry. I don't, deal with that. I tuck it away because I can't be bothered. I will wear, something like usually sweats. I don't do the heels. But to the point about having your hair searched, I've had my hair searched a number of times. I've been misgendered a number of times and searched through the, those machines. So I think that's what I mean when I was trying to say earlier about how it's always a negotiation. Like, where are you going? Do you feel like it? What is the environment? What is the situation? Is it safe? How will I get home? What happens afterwards? Like the process and the journey to get there. So I think that's the airport is a space of surveillance and a place to really see how fashion and surveillance and technology work together.
I think we have time for another question. Is that?
Hi, I have a very quick question. I came a little late, but I don't know if anybody talked about the male gaze on women's fashions, and it's a term I just learned literally a couple months ago. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Thank you.
Liz, do you want to say anything about that? Having designed fashion and left that world for a more
maybe just
less
brief.
body art practice?
Yeah, maybe, but brief. I mean, I don't have a lot to say about the male gaze. I have a lot to say about male gaze. My allies and friends. But the gaze, the male gaze, I don't really care about the male gaze. One thing I was thinking earlier is about how I've seen a lot of young women these days not wearing bras, and it makes me so happy because bras are such a drag, and the idea that we all have to hide this part of our body, like the little details of this part of our body. I mean, sometimes bras are very important and do a lot of performance things that people need, but someone like myself who doesn't really need to wear a bra other than for decorum, is it the male gaze that I'm still worried about in wearing a bra? Or I don't know, there's something in that, and I love this unabashed, the young people, as I call them, as someone in my mid-50s, just wearing t-shirts with no bras. And it's yes, let's do it. And other than that, I mean, when I was younger, I think I considered it more, and I wrote down a note just in the preliminary questions about that when I was doing fashion, I thought of my clothes as aggressively feminine. And Karen Akilah mentioned some things about this, this kind of hyper, or actually you did too. This it's not it's an aggressive stance of kind of fuck you, I'm gonna wear whatever I want, and despite this kind of sexy outfit being tantalizing to you, this is not why I'm wearing it. I'm wearing it because I want to wear it and it makes me feel powerful. So I guess that's that's what I would say. Yeah, in brief.
Shall we end on that note?
Oh,
Thank
no.
you.
No.
On a fuck you note. That's good.
This was so great, and I will never look at sequins the same way again. We have so much to think about, and perhaps maybe inspired to try out new ways of expressing ourselves through our clothing and our footwear. On behalf of the Pembroke Center, the Center's Advisory Council, and our Programs Committee, tremendous thanks to our panelists, Moderator and Mary Murphy. And thank you to everyone for taking the time to attend this family weekend program. Enjoy the rest of this special weekend, and we hope to see you again at a future Friends of the Pembroke Center event.